Let's talk about X and Y intercepts. The X-intercept is going to be on the X-axis. So I'm going to use a blue highlighter for the X-axis. The Y-intercept, I'm going to name it or highlight it pink. So pink is going to stand for the Y-axis. I hope I said that right. And the X-intercept is going to be blue. And if I didn't, I apologize. A little tired. But anyway, so X-intercept, we're going to call it blue. Y-intercept is going to be pink. And to locate the X and Y intercept on a graph, you look for the point where it crosses that line. So the X-intercept for here, this first graph would be, let me zoom in. The X-intercept would be 3. So I can say the X-intercept is 3, or I can write it 3 is on the X-axis, so in the X spot. The other one would be 0. Remember, any point on this line will always have y equals 0. The Y-intercept is on this line at 4, so I can write the Y-intercept as 4, or Y-intercept on the Y-axis, so put it in the Y spot. And remember, for the Y-axis, X is always 0. For the Y-axis, X is always 0. Now you have the X and Y intercept. On this graph, the X-intercept would be 7. And remember, the Y is always 0. So 7, 0. And then for the Y-intercept, X is always 0. And it is at -6. So -6. And the Y, -6 is on the Y-axis, so put it in the Y spot. And X is always 0. Now let's look at how to solve for the X and Y intercept given a linear equation in standard form. This is standard form because it looks like this, which means the X and the Y are both on one side. So this is called standard form of an equation, of a linear equation, standard form of a linear equation. So, since the Y is always 0 for the X-intercept, and we're talking about the blue, I'm going to go and find the X here and put in Y equals 0 for the Y. So we're solving for the blue, and I don't want to highlight it there, so let me rewrite it down here. And this is what I'm solving for. So when I put in 0 here, it disappears. So really you're just left with 3x equals 12. You divide by 3 and x is 4. But I want to show my work. So 3x minus 2 times 0, that disappears. So if you just cover up the letter that you're not solving for, you'll see what to write. 3x equals 12. So that's just it. You divide by 3, and the X-intercept is 4. On a table, that would be here, 4, 0. How do I know that? Because X-intercept is 4, so the 4 is on the X-axis, put it in the X spot, the other one's 0. And on the table, this would be the X-intercept. When you have the 0 in the X spot, that's the Y-intercept. So this one is the X-intercept. Let's do the other one. Y-intercept, X equals 0. So if I rewrite this in here, and I use my pink for the Y-intercept, I would cover that up because 0 would go in there, and then just divide by -2 and get -6. But of course we want to show our work. This goes away. Now you just divide by -2. And so you get -6 is your Y-intercept. So that would go here. Which means this is my Y-intercept. So that's the X-Intercept. Now, I also wanted to talk about where is the X-Intercept, where is the Y-Intercept, looking at these two tables. So let's look at this one. The X-Intercept is when Y is 0, right? So when is Y 0? When is Y 0? Right here. So that would be my X-Intercept. Let's look at this same problem and find the Y-Intercept. Do you see the Y-Intercept? The Y-Intercept is when X is 0. Where is it? I don't see it. Could you say, is it safe to say that it would be right between there? Your Y-intercept would be between there. So I'm going to use pink because that's what we use for Y-intercept. Yeah, because your X would be 0 between the -2 and 2. Let's look at this one. Where's the Y-intercept? Good job. It's right there. It's when X is always 0. Well, where's the X-intercept? Oh, that's when Y is 0. But I don't see 0 here. Is it safe to say that the X-intercept would be between here? Because the Y is 0 between these two numbers. So yes, it is safe to say that my X-intercept would be right between there when Y is 0. Last piece of talking about X and Y intercepts. I have a graph here talking about the number of books that I have to read versus time. And my time is independent. The number of books that I have to read is going to be my dependent variable. And I'm going to start off with 50 books. Well, I know you see that that's the Y-intercept. Good job. And I know that you see that 10 is my X-intercept. Good. But what do they mean? Okay, well, I kind of told you what this is, 50 being where I'm starting. So, how do I write 50 as a point for the Y-intercept? Well, it's on the Y-axis, so put it in the Y spot. And my X is always 0. And in words, what does this mean? You start with 50 books that you have to read, and you haven't been doing, you haven't started the reading because you're at 0 weeks. So you have 0 weeks of reading. Okay, let's talk about the X-intercept. The X-intercept is here. So how do you write that as a point? Well, it's the X-intercept, 10 on the X-axis, so put it in the X spot. The Y would be 0. But what does this mean? Well, in 10 weeks, you would have read how many books? A total of 50 books. And how do you know? Because you went from 50 all the way down to 0. So you have read a total of 50 books, and there are no more books to be read. So 0 books left to read. And that concludes the X and Y intercepts.